And then there's two. Oh boy. Alright, in the basement.
Pick up, Judge. Please hurry up. He's gonna die. He's dead.
감사합니다.
Space coconut.
Okay, so let's talk about the Huntress's little brother, shall we? So we all know that this is just fan service. The killer could have had any kind of skin, but I mean, this is the one that they went with. And so now we have our Korean pop star killer, which is going to polarize the community. Some people are going to love him, some people are going to hate him. The aesthetics is just an opinion. It doesn't really matter, right? My opinion is that he doesn't fit, but I mean, marketing wise, it works. So let's start with this. I don't think the killer is bad, but I don't think he's really good either. His knives are going to get some getting used to and all that sort of stuff, but unlike the Huntress, it takes him quite a while to actually get the damage in with his knives. You need to hit the survivor 8 times before they're injured to the next state. The Huntress, you just need to hit him once. Now granted, he has 60 daggers to throw, and within those 60, you need to hit 8 times. So I mean, they kind of balance it out by giving you an unlimited number. They balance it by giving you an absurd number of daggers to throw, and that you could throw them in quick succession, but you still have to contact with 8. And then after they get injured, they get their normal speed boost and all of that stuff. He is a 110% killer, speed killer. And on top of that, when he winds up to throw, he slows down even further, just like the Huntress. But unlike the Huntress, he has to hit with 8 shots. So I don't know. I'm not good with projectile killers, clearly. But people who are good with him, with the aiming and all of that, are probably going to do just fine. But then it just comes down to, why don't you just play the Huntress then? I don't know. This feels like the devs are running out of ideas. The Blight was like the Oni and Hillbilly, and Ghostface is like Myers, and now the Trickster is like the Huntress. These killers are starting to overlap, and they're starting to do the same thing that other killers do in different ways. So there's that. He's not a very unique killer. His design is unique, his design is good, the art team does good as usual, but I mean, I'm not a fan of this killer. Now, when we get into the technical side of how well you can do in a match with him, his problems become pretty apparent. So, against an organized group of survivors, you're going to run into the same problem that every other killer who lacks map pressure is going to run into, and that's the speed of the gens. You have to rely on perks to slow down generators in order to play the game at a reasonable pace. If you want to try anything else with him, any other kind of build, you're kind of out in the cold. Trying wonky builds or trying new things isn't very good on this killer. The biggest drawback to this killer is that he's very much like Myers and Ghostface, in that Myers and Ghostface build up this meter in order to down survivors, right? Technically, that's what the Trickster is doing, except instead of just looking at survivors, he has to actively hit them with the daggers. He hits them with the dagger, it builds up the meter a little bit, right? It's kind of the same thing with Oni. We have this meter we have to fill up before we can accomplish something. The problem with that meter is that it goes down over time. It goes down after a certain period of time. If the survivor manages to duck and run and use cover, or your aim is bad like mine is, you're going to run out of daggers, or the survivor is going to manage to evade you long enough to get away. Once they do that, their meter goes back to 0. Imagine how that would work on Ghostface or Myers if the survivor got away from you and your evil within on the survivor, or your evil within, ticked down over time. That's basically what's happening here. Because of that, he becomes much less effective. You have to focus on a survivor. You have to tunnel that survivor until the point that they get down or injured. You have no choice. You have to. If you let that survivor go, all of the daggers you threw, all of the time that you wasted on that survivor gets reset with nothing to show for it. And because he can only focus on the survivor that's in front of him, the other 3 survivors are doing gens. You know, that's how that is. And this killer highlights the problems that still exist within the core of the game. Gen speeds and the lack of overall pressure that the killer has in the game. His perks are pretty lackluster. The end game perk is, pretty good if you want to do an end game build. the hex is so innocuous that survivors will usually leave it alone, but I mean, it's a hex perk, so it's going to vanish eventually. The impact of that perk isn't strong enough to really be worth being a hex perk, but it's basically hex bamboozle with no cooldown, or the necessity for the killer to go through the window. So, showstopper or something like that. The other perk, I forget what it is called. That one's pretty interesting, to give survivors exposed as soon as you pick up the other survivor. The duration is, decent, I guess, but it's an active anti-body blocking perk. But again, it's something that, could have been base kit, to avoid it. It's Forced Penance does the same thing, except, you can't insta-down them. These three perks, highlight again that the devs are running out of ideas. These are perks that players have been suggesting as solutions to various problems in the game for years, and these started years ago. And now we're just getting these perks because the devs are running out of ideas, clearly. They have no idea what to do with their perks because there's so many and they're all starting to overlap. And pretty soon, they're going to make a new perk that is almost an exact copy of another perk, except it's changed in one other way. Well, I guess they already did that. No Way Out and Hex Bamboozle. Hex Bamboozle and Bamboozle basically do the exact same thing, but the requirement is completely different. Hex Bamboozle is a hex, and it only requires the survivor to go through the vault. Bamboozle will block the window if the killer goes through. The only difference between those two is who goes through the window, and one is a hex and one is not. It's the only difference. I think they've run out of ideas. I can't say whether the killer is good or bad. This isn't my style of killer. I was kind of hoping for another actually tricky character, but I guess not. But for players who are good, who do have good aim and can work with a 110, well, you know what? It's mostly 110. If the killer player can aim and hit their shots with the daggers, he's going to be reasonable. If the survivors know how to loop him, how to stay out of his line of sight and all of that stuff and stay away from him, he's going to spend a lot of time trying to down a survivor, because once he gets that clear shot, he has to get that clear shot 8 times before he can down a survivor. A Huntress only needs 1. In the meantime, while he's spending all of this time trying to down a survivor or get their injured state taken away, the other survivors are working on gens. So, just based off of that, just knowing that, I don't think he's very good. And in order to make him better, there are a few things that should change. The first idea, and is my favorite idea, is that the laceration timer shouldn't tick down. It shouldn't degrade. If you accomplish the task of hitting a survivor with a dagger, then they should retain that damage, right? And then later on, if you lose them, you can come back to them, you hit them with the dagger, and that's that. But then I guess that creates a whole new problem where that could encourage a playstyle to just spam the ability. So then there's the problem there too. I don't know. I'm not a fan of this killer. I don't think he's good, but any tweaks could make him too good. So the devs have kind of put themselves in a hard spot. Aesthetically, he's divisive. People are gonna like him. People are gonna hate him. I don't know. But like the twins, there was very little hype built around this guy, and now we have this guy. And excitement is just going to be, opinion. I'm not a fan. I forgot. His power, if you do enough damage or hit enough daggers, your meter fills up, you can activate your ability, and you shoot off an unlimited number of daggers at a faster rate. But his movement speed is still slow. So, if a survivor ducks around corners or through jungle gyms and all of that stuff, and they can actively stay away from you, and they're good enough to understand that they just need to stay out of your line of sight, you waste your power. So, nah, I'm not a fan. He's not great. He's probably going to be unchanged once he leaves the PTB. I really, really doubt they're going to change literally anything about him. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We'll see. Those are just my initial thoughts. I'm probably not going to care enough to do another video on him because he's just not that interesting to me. So, sorry. Yeah, I was really hoping to be blown away, but kind of meh. Oh well. Story of this game. We're still waiting for something new. Let me know what you thought about this. I know it's just a rant. I know it's just a talk. I didn't really go into the details of the character. There are plenty of other videos that will do that. You guys enjoy yourselves. You have a good day. I'll see you later.